Okay, welcome to The Actor and the Engineer. My name is Paul James. I'm the actor.
My name is Josh Knapp. I'm the broadcast engineer.
Here we go, Josh. Help. Help.
Well, I told you. I said I'm not sure that you want to go through with this, but you decided you're a trooper and you wanted to dig into Midsommar, Ari Aster's follow-up to Hereditary. The first thing I'm going to say is that his ex-girlfriend must have done a real number on him, because this movie it's intense. So how did you like it? Maybe like's the wrong word.
Well, I want to start with the positive always, because that's just what I want to do. I want to promote the positive. And there's so much to talk about. The movie's so textured and layered, and the design is beautiful, and the cinematography is beautiful, and the acting is exquisite.
Costume design.
And it's just the costume. Oh my God, I'm so glad you said that, because it definitely deserves an Oscar nomination for costume. The score. The thing about the costumes, and we can get into it more later, is that I think that people are going to look at it and say, oh, those are just like chocolate Swiss lady costumes, but they're not. They're very intricate, and they're very particular to each character. Each character has a certain design on their costume. Yeah, they're very unique, and they're appropriate for how they could make it in this society. That said, I texted you after the movie. Really? ... And it's not so much as a question mark. It's more when I walked out of the theater, I went, really? ... What does he want from us? What does Ari Aster want from us as an audience member? I don't know what he wants. And that is a compliment. I'm not criticizing. I'm glad I'm not a critic, because I don't know what I would say about a movie like this. It effed me up for 2.5 hours. I don't know what else to... Okay, review done. 4 stars. I mean, 4 stars with one of them kind of cut off and bleeding. I don't know what I would say if I was a professional critic. I can't wrap my brain around what does he want? And it's a compliment. Let me reiterate that. It's a compliment. I am confused. I'm perplexed. I've been pondering it. I felt itchy and scratchy and ooey and gooey and just disgusting afterwards. But at the same time, I was also elated and over the top, and I was lit by the fact that I hadn't really seen anything like this before, although there are a lot of similarities in the themes that he has now done in the last 2 films he's had that kind of made it easier, and I use that term very lightly, to watch this film, because I guess I was set up for some of it with Hereditary, meaning that things are revealed and you know there's going to be a big reveal, and there is. So I just don't know, what does he want? Does he want us to understand that? And I'm not saying we have to answer any of these questions tonight, but this is what I was pondering in the 110 degrees weather and the humidity yesterday as I was driving home. What does he want? Does he want us to understand that cultures have different traditions, and traditions are misunderstood if you're not part of that culture? What does he want us to understand? That relationships are hard, and that you have to be truthful to your partner in order to really understand them, but yet we lie anyway. What does he want us to understand? What does he want us to grasp from this family who's done what they've done? Does it have is there a ramification of that on her psyche, or is she already messed up? Was this pre-planned? There's just so many things, and questions don't necessarily need to be answered for me. They are compliments, because I will ponder this film for the rest of my life, wondering about it. Now, will I see it again? I don't know, because I think I got it all.
I've seen it twice, and I think it's worth it.
I can't even imagine. So what did you think?
So I watched it before I went on vacation, which was a few weeks ago. And it was like 2 days before I left on vacation. And I was like, oh, I better get this in, because I wasn't sure. I seriously was not sure what kind of legs his movie would have, because just seeing the trailer, I was kind of like, this could be like a one and done. And A24 are amazing. That's that's who released it. And they are the reason why movies like this get wide releases. If it weren't for, A24 and to a lesser extent Annapurna and a couple of these other, smaller labels, we wouldn't see this in the theater. This would be a direct to DVD or, direct to digital or something. But seeing this in the theater, especially with the score and with the cinematography, I thought was definitely worth it. And that's why I wanted to make a point to see it before I left on vacation. But when you said that you wanted to do the podcast on this before you saw it, of course, then I was like, I think that there's enough in there to warrant a second viewing. I did the same thing last year with Sorry to Bother You, because that was such a dense movie, and there's so much symbolism, and there's so much there is so much kind of world building in there. I think it's the same thing with this film, where there are so many clues from the very beginning. I mean, the first frame of the film is a mural, and the mural depicts a lot of what's going to go on in the film, which I didn't realize the first time I saw it, but after seeing it and then knowing, like, there were certain things I was keyed in on this second time, because I wanted to make sure I didn't miss them, and I wanted to see how they set up things that happened later on. I got so much more out of the film last night when I watched it, and I was kind of worried because the only showing I could go to was a 9:45 showing, and it's like a 2-hour long movie, and so by the time you do, I mean, I looked at my watch
2.5.
Yeah, I looked at my watch right before we started the actual film, and after all the trailers, and it was 10:03 or something. So I mean, I knew I was in for a long night, and in the past there have been times when I've kind of fell asleep. John Wick 3, I kind of nodded off about 2/3 of the way through John Wick 3 because there was just so much stuff going on. I mean, it was just like an assault of the senses. It's a good movie. It's a fine movie. It's fun. I will definitely see that movie again because it's a lot of fun. But that movie did not hold my attention in the same way that Midsommar did a second viewing at midnight. I mean, so that says a lot about this filmmaker and about the performances in this film, specifically for me, Florence Pugh, which, I mean, is this the first movie you've seen her in that you have recognized her?
That I know
Okay.
of. Yeah, that I know of. I mean, I don't know her by name. Her face looks familiar, but it could be that she looks like my sister. She looks like my niece. She looks like Jennifer Lawrence. I'm not sure, but she is phenomenal.
Yeah, she's going to be, I mean, we're going to put her on that same, line as the choices that she's been making are going to put her in that same category as Riley Keough and some of the other actors that are purposefully in these roles that may not be glitzy and glamorous, but have a lot of weight to them and have a lot of, I think, a high level of difficulty. And she's even things like the first thing I really clocked her in was Fighting with My Family, which is seriously a good movie. And I know I've said it on here before, but you should definitely seek out that movie because I think it's a lot of fun and I think it's very well done for what it is specifically. And I also haven't been able to see her in The Little Drummer Girl, but that's a John le Carré miniseries on I don't know, IFC or something, or maybe it's Showtime. But either way, she's the star of it, and she plays kind of like somebody who has to become a spy. But anyway, she's been in a few things, but only a few things, and I'm excited to see. Oh, she's going to be in Little Women next. And she's also in Black Widow. So she's going to be kind of like toe to toe with Scarlett Johansson. So that'll be really cool. But anyway, I was kind of amazed at all the stuff that I picked up upon second viewing. And I mean, we can get into it. I don't know. So are you having a problem with the motivation of Ari Aster to write and create this film?
No. It's not a problem. That connotates something negative. It's not that. It's that I don't understand what he wants from us as an audience member. And I don't even think you can articulate something like that. Like Antichrist, Lars Van Trier's.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily understand everything in that film, but I understand what he wants from us as an audience, as a feeling, like what I'm supposed to be getting from the film. I think I understood where he was coming from to a degree, as much as you possibly can with a film like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's put it this way. Let's start with spoilers from this point on, because there's no way to talk about this film without talking about some of the stuff that you see in the beginning of the film. Even the first scene. Because you need to not know anything about this film. You should not read a synopsis. You should not read a critic who gives you the plot line and the narrative.
Yeah.
You should just go into it fully open-minded and blindfolded to whatever the narrative is, because it will play out.
Yeah, spoilers, but I will say that if I'm going to codify it down before you get into specific things, I would say that this film If you haven't seen it, for me, I would say this film is a fantastical, beautiful, horrible, and grotesque relationship film. And it's also folk horror.
What's folk horror?
Folk horror is like Wicker
Oh,
Man.
folk horror. I thought you said folk core. I thought you said folk core.
Folk.
I was like, there's a core to folk.
Oh,
What?
I get it. Like hardcore or mumblecore. It's folk core.
Yeah.
No, it's
Yeah.
folk horror. So yeah, it's that kind of like, yeah. I mean, there's all these movies that I haven't really seen much of. I would say that Kill List is folk horror, also.
Oh God, I so thought of that film. I also
Yeah.
thought of High Rise for some reason after I saw this movie. I don't know why. Okay, so let's also say that if you have not seen Hereditary, you will not want to listen to the rest of this podcast per se,
Oh.
because I do want to compare the two on some level. Not compare them, but I want to make a point to what you were saying about you were saying that I have a problem with this film because it's not a problem. I don't understand what he wants from me. In Hereditary, you understand at the end of that film that was all leading to them doing what they do. And you think the lead character's plot line is going one way when it's really kind of bait and switch type of thing, like it is in the beginning with the young girl. It's a bait and switch type of thing, and it's all about the young man. And that was for purpose. The purpose was to bring back that one guy, right? Okay, so there was a purpose to everything that happened in Hereditary. What's the purpose in this film? And we can discuss it later on, because does she know what's going on from the beginning? Is she friends with the Swedish guy from the beginning? Because there's a look he gives at the beginning of the movie where he stares at her. I think it's in the room where she comes in and they're all sitting around and they're like, oh, so we're going to blah, blah, blah this summer. And then the kind of jester guy, the Joker guy, he gets up and walks away.
Mike.
And yes. And what's his name? He's great.
Mike.
I love him.
Will Poulter. He was in Bandersnatch.
Will
he was
Poulter,
in
right.
Dunkirk. He's been in a bunch of stuff.
Great in Bandersnatch. But anyway, so there's a look between the two of them, and he stares at her for a long period of time. So am I supposed to understand that he has plotted this whole thing out? Obviously he has, because they say later on in the film, we would like to give a congratulations to so-and-so for vetting these people as well as he did. That's not what they say, but that's something that they say, like what they say. So at the end of the film, am I supposed to understand that she knew, she didn't know, or she's satisfied with what happened anyway? Or is it just an allegory, a metaphor for a relationship, and I'm thinking way too much about the actual plot?
The only time that the time you're talking about when he kind of looks at her with this kind of like, you know, like, I've got plans for you type of a thing. But it's like just kind of like a longing kind of like look of he's trying to connect with her, and he's trying to spend energy to figure out how to get into her emotions, or at least how to connect with her in some way. And the first time he does that is after he realizes that she's going with them, and he realizes that she is another potential sacrifice. And he may have thought about her as one of the sacrifices, but then maybe after a little while, once he started to kind of like connect with her, he may have wanted to see if she would become the May Queen, but he has no control over her being the May Queen. And I really don't think that he even knows that she's going to be a part of this whole plan. And he probably doesn't even care if she's the May Queen. He's just bringing her because he likes her, and he thinks that that's just another person who could be a sacrifice. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, I think. And I think that for her, there's two things that I didn't necessarily connect directly, but I think codify the theme of this movie, which is it's not a revenge fantasy, but it is a catharsis fantasy. It is someone trying to get through grief and trying to shuffle off the parasite that is her boyfriend, and her trying to, she actually changes she changes from the beginning of the film to the end of the film, and her boyfriend never does. And we don't get to see her boyfriend do anything but bad things. he doesn't do, first of all, they don't like interact physically other than like maybe holding hands or maybe him. Well, he holds her at the beginning when he goes over there after she's lost her whole family due to suicide, murder suicide. And that there's that kind of push in on them. And she's just, she's just wailing, and we see him and he's holding her in a way, but he's also disconnected emotionally. He's kind of like looking into space. And then I pair that scene, which I didn't really do this the first time, but I this time when I watched it last night, I paired that scene with probably my, I don't want to say favorite, but the most awe-inspiring scene of the film later on, which is when she sees that he's cheating on her with the red-haired girl, and she looks through the keyhole, and then all the other girls come to her and they take her into the bed, house, the sleeping house, and they're all on the floor and they're like consoling her, and then she starts to kind of like do that kind of like moaning, screaming thing. And then it kind of like organically goes from them, watching her do that to them actually being a part of that with her and feeling that emotion with her, which could be, especially for somebody like me who's very cynical, could be a laughable moment. But in that moment, I felt like those other women, those other girls were actually feeling the same emotions that she was feeling. They had some sort of like a connection to each other, and they were actively feeling that together, which is weird because they're part of a community and the other half of the community is actively, contributing to making her feel like that. But
well,
that's neither here nor there right now. But
yeah, but they do that a couple times in the film. They do that when you see the suicide.
Yeah. Not at the beginning, but when the old people commit suicide.
Right. When you really know as a character in something that you're in something that's not so good, when they realize that moment, that's that
the turning
with
point.
The two suicides. And I think that's just the director saying to us that they are community, and for every good there's something bad, and we're going to feel it along with you. So yeah, I agree that when they start that wailing, just like when they start the chanting of the kind of sexual chant that the young girl starts to breathe heavily because she's having sex with the kind of redheaded
Christian,
guy, the lead's boyfriend.
I wonder if that's an interesting name for him. Trying not to read too much into that.
No, it stuck out to me like a sore thumb in the best way. I was like, that is purposeful, and it is interesting that they named that character Christian when he is the polar opposite of what we would think of as Christianity and as a Christian.
Yeah.
Although I don't really fault him that bad. I don't think he's that bad of a guy. So it's not like he cheated on her before. It's not like,
okay.
So they were in a relationship and she was like,
that's what I felt coming out of it the first time, but seeing it a second time, it's totally different.
Why though? What does he do that's so, they're in a 4-year relationship. Big deal. He doesn't remember their anniversary.
That's not it.
Her birthday. Guys do that all the time. I'm not excusing it, but it is. I mean, he's been wanting, instead of just, there is a theory about being in a relationship where you are torturing yourself past a certain point when you don't get out of it, when you know somebody else wants to get out of it. You are torturing yourself as much as the person is torturing you because they're not getting out of it or letting you out of it.
Yeah.
So where becomes her responsibility in the fact that, yes, she needed him in a way that was, he could not have walked away from her at that point in her life because of the murder, suicide, that kind of stuff. Up to that point, it's made very clear that she's kind of a pain in the ass and that they want to break up. He's wanted to break up with her for the longest period of time. So you're smiling.
Well, because you're taking all of the power and putting it, and you're saying that she's the only one who could have broken up with him.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that what happens to him does not justify his behavior. The stuff that he does to her would not make me smile that he's getting burned in a bear suit because he did bad things to me.
And that's exactly what I said. I went with a buddy of mine, and afterwards I was like, he's not the greatest guy, but I don't think he deserved that. But after looking, and I did listen to a couple of interviews with Ari Aster. There's actually a really good one, Ari Aster and Dave Eggers, who directed The Witch, and who directed the upcoming the Lighthouse with Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson, which looks crazy. But they kind of talked back and forth on
And
the
The Witch was great too.
on the A24 podcast, and I think that they didn't specifically nail down certain things, but I think fantasy is the key to this film. We should look at it. We should look at it not as a literal telling of events, but as a, like I said earlier, a cathartic exercise for the main character. I'm not trying to say that the stuff didn't really happen, and I'm not trying to say that this is something that is not specifically supposed to be like an A to B to C to D type, supposed to be a little bit more ethereal than what we might be trying to do, which is what I love to do. I like to put things in a box and categorize them and then move on. But I think this film is more about emotions and about interpersonal relationships, either between two people in a singular relationship or between a community, and then we have to reconcile what we're willing to give up to get that kind of community, because it made me, like, seeing those other women feel what she was feeling in that moment, even though they don't even know that guy. Like, they don't have any connection to that guy, and they wouldn't care whether he's, screwing one girl or another girl. They are invested in this woman who's in front of them and in her pain, and they are that micro community for her at that moment, and it's obviously helpful for her. And so that's what she gets, in this community. But because of that, like, they're flaying people open and hanging them in a chicken coop, and killing bears and shoving people in bear suits. Like, that's the other side of this organic, feeling and emotional community. So it's a perverse thing, but she gets good out of it. But there's obviously bad that happens because of it. So for me, that's the interesting dichotomy that I'm interested in thinking about and analyzing and understanding that we're not trying to say, like, this person's good, this person's bad, this person did the right thing, this person did the wrong thing, this person deserved that. You're right. He doesn't deserve to die in the way that he dies. He doesn't deserve to die at all. But neither do all those other people. The Will Poulter character peed on a tree. Does he deserve to have his face ripped off and have it used Leatherface style? No, he doesn't. But that's what happened. So we're using our logic in this micro society that has made their own things. I mean, they purposefully inbreed people so as to create an inbred person that is, drawing and coloring on paper. I mean, that right there is
considered a profit.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually.
That right there is crazy.
Okay, but that brings me to my question then. Then what are we supposed to do? Or are we just supposed to, as an audience, stand back? And I understand what you're saying. You're saying traditionally you were following a certain narrative, and that might not be the way to watch this film. I get it. And we're following somebody's relationship / fever dream,
Yep.
if you will, that allows, I mean, it says a lot about a lot of things. It says a lot about relationships. It says a lot about kind of fame and good fortune, meaning she becomes the May Queen, and then she gets celebrated and she's kind of enjoying that. She goes out on that little ride and they're having a good time. She gets to bless all the food and blah, 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 blah. And, it's be careful what you wish for, because this is going to turn out not so great, even though she smiles at the end. So I understand that. And I am able to, as an audience member, disconnect from what I think I'm understanding about a film and allow the film to kind of, sounds artsy fartsy, but I allow it to flow over me and I allow it to go into me the way that the film is supposed to be made. But when I come out of it, I have to, on some level, understand what I'm supposed to understand.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes, you're right. Yeah. Left brain, right brain, all that stuff gets disconnected and you're not sure where to associate things. So I wasn't necessarily saying that the ends justify the means with his behavior. And I get what you're saying. If you look at it from the point of view of somebody, let's say it's just a guy and a girl, and this is inside her brain when he breaks up with her, doesn't break up with her, cheats on her, and what the body emotionally does when your heart is broken is disastrous. It's horrifying. It is something I would never wish on anybody. Although it's sort of a step in life and it's sort of a phase in life, and everybody, gets their heart broken. At least that's what they say. I think maybe they say that to make people feel better who got their heart broken. But it is one of the most devastating human trials that you have to go through. So if that's what he's saying, then I fully get it. And I so understand it on that level. I don't know
Yeah.
why I need to put it on a coat hanger and put it in the closet and understand it as a coat, but that's what I have to do.
I think that that's what he's kind of getting at is that for her to move on from, for her to move forward in her life, it's like she had to burn it down. She had to like burn down her relationship with him. And maybe she was in a position where the only thing to get her to burn it down is for people to put her in that position of power, the real position of power of making the decision of whether to, she's ultimately making a decision on whether to break up with him or not. It's just a more extreme decision of, not only am I going to break up with you, I'm going to doom you to a horrible death. And she's going to take all the power away from him. He's not even able to talk. He's not able to defend himself. He's not able to move. But he is fully conscious. And I don't know if that's like a turn the tables type thing that, maybe in the beginning of the film, it seems like throughout the beginning of the film, she feels like she's powerless, or she might not even be cognizant that she is feeling that way, or that she is powerless in a particular manner, because things like he sets up the Sweden trip of like, he's kind of like slow playing the Sweden trip. He's like, oh, I told you 6 months ago I wanted to go. And it's like, well, yeah, but there's a difference between like, well, and she even says in there, she's like, what if I told you 6 months ago I wanted to go to China or whatever it is? And then, he's like, oh, well, that's crazy, but it's exactly the same thing. And he does these like, and he does it with his friends too. When he's like, he's not going to like he doesn't go to his friends and is like, guys, I'm thinking about asking Danny to go to Sweden with us. What do you guys think? Because that's going to affect you guys. He doesn't do that. He goes to Danny himself and asks her if she wants to go. And then he goes back to them and is like, hey, I already did this. He does it with the thesis. He goes to William Harper Jackson, and he's on, shout out The Good Place. He's on The Good Place. He's really good. He plays Chidi on The Good Place. But he goes to the William Harper Jackson character and is like, oh yeah, the thesis, I'm going to do this with my thesis. And he's already talked to other people about it before he goes to William Harper Jackson. So, that he's kind of like schemy or fiendish, but not in a completely like malicious way. He is, it's not the worst thing. It's not like he's twiddling his thumbs and buying nuclear weapons, but it's all these little things. He's kind of like so he's so behind. Yeah, he's not Dr. Evil, but he's so kind of like under the radar, trying not to make anybody mad or trying not to make hard choices. And because of that, all these people are affected.
Right, but that's the point. So what do? You make selfish, hard choices and you say, she's coming with us. I'm taking over this thesis. Goodbye. And people still are going to be mad at you. So instead of doing that, he stayed with his girlfriend through a tragedy, and it's been I guess a year, I think they say, or 6 months. I don't know
6
how
months,
long it's been.
yeah.
6
It's
months.
6 months because it starts in the winter and it's the summer.
Right, exactly. And that's not enough time, by the way, for somebody to just be jutting off to a vacation foreign place at 6 months after your mother, father.
But he told her months ago. What's the big deal?
The point is that then what is the choice? The choice is to turn and say, hey, by the way, so sorry that your mother and father were killed by your sister and then she killed herself in a tragic accident, or a purposeful accident, if you will. And by the way, I'm going to Sweden and I don't really want to date you anymore because I really didn't want to date you before this tragedy happened in your life. So I'm just being honest with you here. So I'm going to Sweden, which I did mention to you, but I didn't really play it up because I thought, well, probably wouldn't be a good idea to play it up because your parents were just killed by your sister. And by the way, you've kind of been a pain in my life for a while now, but I didn't want to tell you because you went through this tragedy. I mean, what's the choice he's got? And what's the choices he got with his friends? He already knows how his friends, and his friends are right about her before the tragedy. His friends are like, and if you watch the way that they all play that one scene, it is, Mark says, you know, you've been wanting to dump her for months. And the two other react as if, yeah, here we go again. It's the same thing over and over again. You keep talking about this. You tell us one thing, you tell her another thing, blah, blah, blah. She's clingy. She this, that. What's he supposed to say? Oh, by the way, I know that you really don't like the fact that my girlfriend is clingy and she's been kind of a pain in the ass, but because she's had this tragedy in her life, I'm going to take her to Sweden. I know you guys don't want to deal with it. I'm so sorry to put this on you. Instead of doing all that, instead of being honest, people don't accept honesty. So he just goes, oh, I invited Danny. I'm bringing Danny, he says, or Danny's coming is what he says. He doesn't
No,
ask,
he said I invited her, but she's not going to come. That's what he said. He's saying that she's not going to come, but then it turns out she does come. So it's like he's so back and forth, and it's like he wants to always have his cake and eat it too. He never like makes a decision.
It's called being in a relationship. It's called compromise, half happy. That's what it is. I think, and in this podcast should not be about whether or not this is a bad guy or a good guy. It's not. That's not the point. The point is that I guess it depends on your own experiences where you lie in this, where you fall in this scenario. Because for me, I'm a very outspoken person and I speak my opinion, and a lot of people are like, they like I can't believe you said it so bluntly and all this other stuff, and then they pull me to the side and say, oh, I was thinking that for 2 hours, but I was afraid to say anything. Well, then why don't you say that instead of when I say the truth?
Sounds like that's the exact thing that I'm making a statement about. That's exactly what I'm saying. Why don't you ask that to the Christian character?
Because it doesn't work. Because nobody wants to. Everybody says they want the truth, but they don't. Because when they criticize you about being blunt and over the top and speaking your mind, but then when they want something, they'll go, hey, you know, if you go ahead and mention that and get it out on the table. Oh, okay. So that personality trait doesn't work for you when it's against you. And I've spoken up against the truth against you. But now you want me to speak the truth to your friend. I'll give you the example of what I'm talking about. I went to dinner with these two couples years ago. And when the check came, I had two friends, my very good friends, and I just met this other couple. When the check came, the other couple, I don't remember the amount of the bill, put down $20. We were all going to split the bill. And I looked at it and I was like, wait a second, but you had a glass of wine and you had shrimp cocktail, you had all this other stuff. And then I just said, does this include the tip? Right? Because I didn't want to assume they weren't going to pay enough money, but that's exactly what they were doing. And they said, oh yeah, 20's fine. And I was like, the hell it is. So I said, oh, excuse me, ma'am, can we get separate checks? And the couple I was with who invited me, they invited me on purpose because that happens to them all the time when they go out with that couple, and they knew I would say something. So instead of saying something, I went, hey, can we get separate checks? And that ruffled that other couple's feathers. The couple who never paid thought that was just so rude. And I'm like, they only thought it was rude because they don't want to pay the whole bill. That's my point. I don't know why we're getting off on that tirade. Let's move on.
Well, I mean, I think from the very beginning, the score is awesome. I mean, you've got kind of like singular female vocals, you've got some kind of choir stuff, and then a lot of strings, like quartet type stuff. And the kind of like ancillary technical people surrounding this film all were on their A game. Production design was amazing, and they like built that whole town, like that whole community in Hungary. I mean, it's crazy. Music by the Haxan Cloak. Wow, that sounds awesome. So they've done music for Stranger Things. They've done music for the Shooter TV series. Yeah, I mean, I think it might be a band. I'm interested to do some more research on them because it does have a feeling, like an ambiance to it, and I think that it fits perfectly within this film. And then, yeah, like I said, production design was amazing, and the costumes. I did hear hear Ari Aster talk about that, and you are exactly right. Each one of the actors in that community has separate runes on, like, individual runes that are specific to them on their cloaks and their any of their garb, and they're very specific. I did think it was interesting, not only the what they were wearing, but also like the wardrobe for the main characters too. For the Florence Pugh character Danny, she was in kind of like very comfortable clothes, which she's a beautiful woman and she is naturally beautiful. It seems like it looked like she was never wearing like extreme makeup. Even when I think during the party sequence, I think that they like put makeup on her or something. But really, like, she just is. I'm amazed that there are, whenever we see actors and actresses, specifically, like famous actresses. We've been watching Big Little Lies, and it's like Nicole Kidman is beautiful, yes, but like she's always wearing like a good chunk of makeup, and all of those actors are actually. Shailene Woodley is another example of someone who is naturally beautiful, I think, too. But Florence Pugh falls into that category for me. I mean, my wife is naturally beautiful. She doesn't really have to wear makeup, and she just looks great. So I'm kind of drawn to those types of women, I guess. But so anyway, and then did you notice, like, I noticed it the second time, the shirt that Christian is wearing, like, has like a huge neck or something. Did you notice that? It's like an ill-fitting shirt or something.
I noticed a lot of that, and I thought to myself, this is really ingenious because what it's doing is it's showing us that they're just normal human beings. Now,
Yeah.
granted, both Jack Rayner and Florence Pugh are beautiful people. They're very good-looking
Mm-hmm.
people. They look like movie stars, but they look like real people too.
Yeah.
And I don't want to make this about a body shaming thing or anything like that because I don't like to pull attention to those things. But it's actually it's a very specific thing that I noticed that is about what Ari Aster sets up. He sets up real people in situations that nobody wants to be in. And the way that he does it is he casts people who look like they could just walk off the screen and walk past you. Yeah, you might say, oh my God, he is so good looking. Oh my God, she's so pretty. And you're exactly right. She is as naturally beautiful as Steph is, your wife. That's exactly that quality that they have. Um, but, you know, by movie star standards, what she was wearing was just not flattering to her body. And she looked like she was always in some kind of workout clothes. And it looks like she just looks like your every average day woman walking down the street, which is a great thing to see because we have this body dysmorphia thing in Hollywood where they have to be stick figures in order to be considered characters in a movie. And the same with Jack Rayner, the guy who plays Christian. I noticed that ill-fitting t-shirt, and I also noticed that he's not Captain America in shape.
Mm.
He's not out of shape by any stretch of the imagination. And let me tell you, you get to see how in shape or out of shape he is. Like, really get to see it. But he has like jiggles like I have, and he has jiggles like a guy who walks down a street has. He looks like a normal human being. And I think that's great. I think that's fantastic that they didn't say you have to be in the best shape possible. He's a young kid. He just looks like he's your average college looking guy. Mm. He doesn't look like he works out in the gym every day. He doesn't look like he's out of shape. He's not out of shape per se, but he runs around completely naked. So you get to see what jiggles and what doesn't jiggle. And I know that that's not exactly a technical thing to talk about, but it's actually a compliment to him and the filmmakers to say, let's use real people. And that brings me to that t-shirt. That t-shirt looks like something he's worn for 2 weeks, decides he needs to go out the next day, forgets to wash it, and puts it on anyway because it's the best thing that doesn't smell. It doesn't flatter his body.
Yeah, and now that we're talking about this, I'm actually pulling this into what I experienced in the film. Whereas yes, that's a shirt that you should probably retire maybe because the neck's all askew and it's like really stretched because he's probably washed it a billion times or whatever. But he just doesn't care, or he just doesn't want to spend the time to deal with it. And then at the same time, the Danny character, she is probably still she's obviously still in mourning for her family. And so she's not going to get all dolled up and wear mini skirts and, push up bras, because she's still in mourning. She's still dealing with those emotions. And, her, clubbing clothes are probably not the first thing, top of her mind right now. So I can see how their wardrobe informs their characters throughout the film. And also you notice that by the end, she's in this just amazing drapery of wildflowers and like head to toe. And that's where that character ends her film journey, and the last frames are her smiling.
Well, I was going to say, I don't know if you noticed Christian's shoes. They look like tennis shoes that he wears because they're comfortable, but they look like if he takes them off, they smell. They just have this lived-in shape to them. They look cockeyed, and they don't look tied right. They look like that pair of shoes that you shouldn't wear because it probably could smell your feet through the shoes, but you got to anyway because they're the most comfortable things. What it says to me is that these are just your average, normal people in an unaverage, out of control situation.
Ooh, yeah.
It could be you or I. It could be us.
Yeah.
And if they cast people who were dolled up they're not ugly by any stretch of the imagination. They're both extremely good looking. Yeah. Let me make that clear. But they seem accessible in the way that they dressed them, in the way that they allowed them to have natural bodies. It just seemed accessible, which actually creeped me out more because I couldn't separate myself from them. I couldn't say, oh, that's a movie star. That's happening to a movie star. I thought to myself, I would be that guy when the suicide happens that was going, what the F, dude? I'm that guy. So I'm the guy who ends up in the rooster.
Yeah, isn't that good horror
place.
Though? Isn't that's the mark of good horror? And especially like the folk horror.
Absolutely.
It's like the only reason why the horror portion of it works is because they are our surrogates. Without them, we would just be like watching a documentary about this community where nobody gets freaked out and everything's totally fine all the time. It would be the world's most boring documentary. It would be interesting for us, but if you're just like watching a community go about their business, that's totally different than us sitting there experiencing the same issues. That's another example of like, after that happens, after that, the kind of like those 72-year-olds suicide situation, after that happens, at that moment, as a good boyfriend, or even as just like a decent human being who cares about the person who he's standing right next to, in light of what had happened 6 months earlier, he probably should have like picked her up and taken her out of there and just headed for the door and just gone.
Okay.
Let's get into it.
That's interesting that you brought that up because I thought about that, and I thought, what is the fine line between wanting to be rescued and being rescued? And rescuing your damn self. She does not say a word. She goes back
and packs her stuff.
Oh yeah, she does, doesn't she?
Yep.
Yeah, she does. Never mind. But she still stays. She still stays. She still doesn't throw. She just still doesn't try to like leave when that other girl is leaving. Oh, well, I'll go with her then. I mean, it's sure you're right. She does pack. But it just seems like.
But I think the reason
she wants to be there as much as he does. So why is it his responsibility? Why is it his responsibility to pick her up and take her out? Why isn't her responsibility to go, I'm leaving. Goodbye. See ya.
She would also be alone in Sweden by herself with a bunch of stuff with no way to get home.
Not around people who watch 72-year-old people throw themselves off a cliff. Win-win. She's not around those people anymore. And as a matter of fact, I'll tell you this much, and maybe it's because of Hereditary, but if I had not seen that movie and I saw this movie and the guy said, well, what happens at 72? And the guy, cuts across his throat, like, I would be like, oh, I've seen Logan's Run. I'm out. I know exactly where this is going. And then when you see those people come to the dinner table, you're like, oh, those are those people. Mm-hmm. Those are those people who they're 72 years of age. Yeah. And they weren't kidding about that. I'd be like, I'm out now, dude. Not doing it. The whole thing is weird. Everything about it is weird.
Of course.
Everything.
Yeah.
Says run.
Yeah.
But nobody does.
The only reason why we can hang logically is that 3 of those guys are anthropology students. Like, this is their jam. Like, this is what they've spent 4 years learning about. And now they're seeing it. And so there's going to be a built-in hook for, like, this is the coolest thing ever. It would be like you going to, a theater school or some, I don't know, you going to Steppenwolf or something, and then, being all in that, and then experiencing all that. And I might be like, wow, this is kind of boring. And then you'd be like, what are you talking about? This is amazing. So I can totally see them, and just seeing their reactions going in the William Harper Jackson character and the Christian character being like, okay, this is kind of, like, this is cool. Like, and they even ask each other, like, are you okay? And they're like, yeah, what do you mean? Am I okay? Like, we totally know this happens. In fact, he even knew he even knew the name of the procedure or whatever, the Josh character. Why do I not know that guy's name's Josh? I just saw it last night. Anyway, William Jackson Harper. I've been like transposing his name too, but either way, the Josh character, even knew what that procedure was going to be before they even got there, because their buddy Pele told them about it the night before. So I mean, I don't know. We can talk about that a little bit more if you wanted to, as far as like why they stay versus why they leave. But I still think that that's yet another kind of notch in the belt of, like, he's more worried about the anthropological side of the things than his girlfriend, how she's reacting to certain things. That's all. I think that's the point of this movie. The point of this movie is her getting rid of him in a decisive way that allows her to purge herself of his effect on her. And I'm not saying that it's healthy, and I'm not saying that in real life that's the right way to go, but I am saying that,
oh no, that's totally the right way to go. That's the only way.
Burning him in a bear suit.
Yeah.
But see, that's the other thing, is that, like, I think that, there's got to be a lot of catharsis built into that. And I can see how, for someone who's in the midst of so much turmoil and so much emotional, just heart-wrenching, that someone could get to that point where they might be dreaming of doing that to a person who has, who they feel like has hurt them to that level. But anyway, here's another cool thing about I'm going to go back to the whole, like, 72 years, and 9 is like a huge thing, and I haven't done enough research on it, but I mean, okay, so 90 years, it happens every 90 years. There's 9 people who need to be sacrificed. We get that. You've got your, they are at the end of their life. They're at the winter of their life at 72. But Pele goes and describes the life cycle of a Horga, and from 0 to 18, that's the spring, and from 18 to 36, that's the summer. And and how old are these characters? They're probably about 23, would you say?
Well, they're still in school. Oh no, they're doing their thesis, so they would be PhD
so they'd be
candidates, right?
they just got done with their undergrads, or
21, 22, 23.
So they'd probably about 23, right? So 23 is directly in the middle of the summer period, or Midsommar. So those characters are at their midsummer age. So I thought that was kind of interesting how it, like, lines up, because that's, you do the math, and it's going to be about 23. So I thought it was kind of cool, but I didn't realize it the first time I watched it. But then that's what I mean. There's like little things you catch second time you watch the film. And
no, I picked up on all of that stuff, and I picked up on all of that stuff the first time I saw it, because when they finally determined they need 9 people at the end, I was like, okay, then I am correct. They're talking, and I think there's like even 9 panels that you see at one point, because I counted them. The number 9 is repeated a lot of times in the film.
So, and then also I wrote down a couple of things. I wrote down the mural at the beginning. Is important. All the murals throughout. There's even when he's sitting there before he goes in and talks to the main lady, the main graphic he's looking at right in front of him in her little house thing is a bear burning. And it's like there's all that stuff. And also earlier on in Danny's apartment, right above her bed is this painting of a bear with a little girl like holding the bear's head in her hands. And I was like, oh man. So there's all this, it's all interrelated there. I will bring up the rhythmic breathing, which we haven't talked about. The ooh, like that whole thing, like is creepy, number one, and is used to very good effect in the trailer. But I noticed that when Christian tries to do the whole like impromptu birthday thing with the cake, and he can't get, that's really funny. He can't get the candle to light, and he's singing her happy birthday. I thought that was very well done. But when she goes to blow out the candle, it's a very intentional. It doesn't come off as weird. And the first time I saw it, I didn't see it, but the second time I picked up on it. Instead of like, what everybody else is doing later on in the film, though, ooh, she goes like, ooh, like she does an inverse of that to blow out the candle. And I was like, that's kind of crazy. Like it's weird kind of symmetry going on in a lot of these things. And then later on, you see them using the ooh-ha thing later on. But yeah, I mean,
she breathes like that too. When she starts to have the mental breakdown during the trip scene, she starts to breathe like that too.
But it's not that.
And then she goes into a dark.
I wanted to talk to you about her.
Yeah, but it's intentional. It's intentional.
I wanted to talk.
You can tell that it's a motif.
Okay. Well, I did want to talk to you about what did you feel like her mental, like her emotional breakdowns, her on-screen crying, for lack of a better word, her on-screen emoting. Is that something that, because to me it seemed really genuine, but I don't know enough about acting to know, like, I mean, I'm guessing she could probably like turn that on or turn that off, but the fact that she's having, like, there are times, especially like in the initial scene where there's that like single tracking shot and, she's on the couch with Christian right after she found out that her sister killed her parents and herself, that there are times when she's like crying or just like expelling a bunch of air, and then you just like hear nothing, and it's like she can't breathe back in, like she can't accept any air. It's like she knocked the wind out of herself. Like that seemed like a bold choice for her to do, but it also seemed very accurate for what somebody who's going through something like that would possibly experience. And it's not just like wailing and crying and just how much noise can you make. It's intentional from an acting standpoint, where I don't know, it just seemed real. I don't know. It was getting up to Captain Phillips level for me. So what did you feel that from her, or was it just kind of just lost her family crying for you?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I'm glad that you're bringing this back up again, because I didn't want to say it in the beginning because I didn't want to sound too explosive about her. In any other film, this performance would get an Oscar nomination.
Wow.
No doubt about it. And people would say that about Toni Collette and Hereditary. They were upset she didn't get an Oscar nomination. True. And it's a sad thing that a genre picture, which I don't even really consider this a genre picture, doesn't get Oscar-worthy performance nominations. Now, there is a precedence for things breaking that glass ceiling. Sigourney Weaver in Aliens, first time a sci-fi film got an acting nomination, female. I don't think any males have gotten acting nominations up to that point either, but it just seemed even more breaking of the glass ceiling that Sigourney Weaver in an Aliens picture was nominated for the Oscar, deservedly so. You go back and you watch that performance and you're like, yeah, duh, like that's an Oscar worthy performance. Same with Florence Pugh in this. She is, you said guttural, and I agree with that 100%. I don't know what the technique is. I don't understand it per se, but I understand how to get there myself. It's in the writing. It's in the laying out of what the scene is about. The thing that got me about what you call the one tracking shot when she was on the couch with him is that there's a difference between crying and wailing. And there's a difference between wailing because you're feeling pain when you just wail out loud. And then there's that moment where you have to, as a human body, suck in air to put out air. And what she does is, it's not about a mechanical thing with her body. It's the fact that that pain keeps swelling up in her, and swelling up is not even a good term for it. Welling up, bursting through her, burning through her, tearing through her. And every time she kind of has to take a breath, the pain surges right back through her and she wails out loud. It's devastating, that scene. It is emotionally on point. There's nothing more to say other than it's one of those performances that if it was in any other movie, people would be like, Oscar nomination, Oscar nomination. That said, we've talked about this a million times. That doesn't mean that's the end all be all of like the reason to call something an Oscar worthy performance. The bottom line is that she, as an actress, had a job to do, and she fulfilled it way past the potential of probably what was on the page. And she continues to do that throughout the film. The scene in the bathroom of the plane, which is really well shot, by the way,
Yeah,
because
it's
she's
a
going
cool
to the bathroom
transition.
of the young adult's apartment, and then she's in the plane and she's wailing again. And the only thing I can say is that I'm wondering if she did that thing where, I'm sure she just let it go, but there's this concept that when you have to cry on stage, first of all, I don't think that you can teach somebody how to do that. You either have that or you don't. And I think it's about the words, it's about the script. And I know that to be true because I've read certain things and done certain things that every single time I read them, I well up, and it's just because it's on the page. I don't know what it is. I don't know if that's a gift. I don't know if that's an ability. I don't know if that's a talent. It just happens because the words are on the page. It's like watching something play out on stage or watching a movie. You well up because the emotions are there on the page, but the page happens to be a film, or, can even be a book too. You just well up. The thing that she does that's infinitely impressible is that you can tell she's trying to not do it. She's trying not to wail out loud like that. And I have an old acting friend. He's not old. He's an old acting friend.
From a long
a
time
friend
ago.
for a long period of time.
There you go.
Yes, thank you. Jeez, that sounds terrible. I mean, I'm not going to say his name. But he said when he has a situation like that, he will tell himself, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, because that's exactly what you do in real life. And when you're a kid and you cry and you lose your breath, that's exactly what she did in the movie too. You do that silent scream thing, which is horrifying when you're a little kid, because there's a point where you're like, I'm never going to breathe again and I'm going to die crying, and you get scared of that. And then that makes it harder to cry or harder to breathe when you're a kid. So I'm wondering if she on some level tapped into the don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, don't break down. To me, it looked like she has finally able to let go, because in the beginning of the film, nobody is really believing her. Well, she's called her boyfriend, and he's basically like, your sister does these things. And then she calls a friend, and then nobody really believes her. And then you see the last line of the computer of the note that her sister leaves her, or the message that her sister leaves her, and it says goodbye. Mom and dad are coming too. Goodbye, I think it says. And she's not had a moment to do anything but like be scared that something's gone wrong. And nobody believes her, basically, because her sister cries wolf all the time. So now it's the time where not only was she right, but it's the worst case scenario. And nobody believed her. And nobody was there for her. And so Florence Pugh must have played on that, because that's what comes across. It's a masterful performance. There's not a moment where you don't know exactly what her point of view is. She gets her point across left and right. And I'll tell you, the scene that I was the most impressed with her in was not any of the cry scenes, although they are masterful. It's the scene where they're at the party in the beginning of the film, and she finds out that he's going, and she just stops and looks. And it looks like that expression on a little kid's face when they discover that Santa Claus might not be real. They don't say anything. They just look at you like, wait, what? And they're reevaluating everything that they've learned up to that
Mm.
point about Santa Claus. They don't want to believe it. They know it's the truth, but they don't want to believe it. That look on her face is masterful. You read so much into it. There is so much texture to just that look. And that to me is something that not many people can do. She just, with one look, you understood the last 10 months of their relationship. You understood every time he's done that to her in the past 10 months or past 5 years or 4 years or however long it's been. You understood that, she's finally caught him in something because he's probably done this before and said, no, it was Saturday, not Sunday night. I was going out with the guys. She just turns and looks at him. And then there's this like cold face blank look, like she's shooting daggers through her eyes at him. And to convey all of that, like I said, in any other film, and we need to get over the fact that the performances in a folk horror film, we need to get over that. And it probably would have set a precedence if Toni Collette had been nominated last year. Now, it was a tight year that year, and I can see why she got left off the list to a degree. And not my favorite movie of the year by any stretch of the imagination, but we need to stop looking at performances other than just the performance. If it's in a musical, if it's in a pirate movie, if it's in The Matrix, if it's in whatever, if the performance is worthy, then we need to recognize it. And it's one of those performances that I won't be surprised. I will not be surprised if she's nominated for Independent Spirit Awards, Golden Globes, maybe even the BAFTA.
Yeah.
She's British,
yeah.
right? Yeah. And maybe with some kind of momentum, she might get recognized in the Oscars, Screen Actors Guild. It's a little early on, and that might hurt her, but it's really a performance that should be recognized.
That being said, how did the last scene, the last few frames of the film play for you? Like, do you feel like her performance at the end of the film conveyed her character's emotional state at that point? Or do you feel like there's still a disconnect there? What did you get from that last scene? Her kind of going from a sad to a happy face.
And then looking dead in the camera. There's a point where that other character looks dead in the camera, by the way, too. They're Pele, that character turns and looks at the camera at one point.
When?
I think so, but I see things that most people don't see. So I'm not saying that they actually happen. I just see things. So who knows? I say weird crap like that all the time, and I go back and watch the film and I was like, what the hell was what was in my eyes? Like, it's worse the way I thought it was. Anyway, I'm pretty sure he looks over his shoulder at the audience at one point. I'm pretty sure. But anyway, and he might be looking at another character and it might just look like that. Here's the thing. I was waiting for that Rosemary's Baby moment, and without giving anything away of that film, where
that 50-year-old film,
he was in on it.
I wouldn't worry about it.
I mean, it's like, I don't want to tell people what Rosebud is from Citizen Kane, even though that's 100 years old or whatever. I actually thought Christian made a deal with the devil, and that this was all planned for her to be the May Queen and all that other stuff. And then you very quickly figure out at the end that he's screwed. Like, and you can't, I'm sorry to justify what he does again. He's on drugs. Most of the time he makes poor decisions. Just
totally.
saying.
Yeah, he's totally on drugs. They want him. They're setting him up to do this. I'm not saying that he's completely on the hook for exactly everything
what does
he
that
did.
say for the metaphor or the allegory that this is about a relationship?
Oh, it is.
Then that says that the other person is setting that other person up for these failures. So you can't really blame them and get the hell out of the relationship yourself.
She's not setting him up for failures, but he's putting himself in a position. He drank the mushroom tea.
She's not listening to him in the beginning of the film. We can go back to that. She's not listening to the cues and the clues that he's giving her, and vice versa.
Wow.
And he wants to be a good guy. I know we're back to it, but I'm just saying that
it's on her to get rid of him. He can't make a decision to move on, I guess.
Which happens all all the time in relationships, and there's always that person who tries to make it you break up with them. It happens all the time. I'm just saying there's equal responsibility in what they're going through.
All right.
And it's unfair to judge him based on this situation, because what does a person do?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry about your mother, father, and sister.
I think
Later.
I empathize more with her character than his character because of the frame of reference of the film. The film is pointing towards her character as the sympathetic character and against his character as a sympathetic character. And I think that's why I'm kind of keying in more on those things, because there's never a time when he gives an inch and she constantly gives back. She does. The mushrooms at the very beginning, they pull up and she's like, I don't want to do mushrooms. And he's like,
no, he says, I'll wait.
Yeah, but it's one of those.
Once again, she's asking him.
Yeah, but
once again, she's asking him to change what they had planned at the last
She
minute.
She didn't know they were going to take mushrooms. None of them did.
Absolutely. Yes, they did.
Oh, I don't know.
Somebody says something like, doesn't somebody say something like, don't you have the stuff or something like that?
Not that I know
At some
of.
point?
No, I mean, I just saw it last night too. But
Okay. Totally. And so that's why I'm saying that I put things into films. Maybe I inject some stuff that isn't there. Okay. Let's just get to the point of, we're obviously going to have to agree to disagree that
Sure.
we see this from
that's
two
fine.
different points of
But
view.
let's go back to the question.
And I
though.
guess that's that I am going to go back, but I do want to state this. I guess that's the difference between a healthy relationship like you and I have when it comes to compromise, half happy, where we're just going to have to say, okay, I see it one way, you see it one
Sure.
way, and neither the twain shall meet, without trying to force or beg or plead or sympathy or expect the other person to know our point of view. Just saying. Okay, so let's get to the end. I'm aware of what I just did there. Okay.
And now I can't say anything. Okay, go.
That's why I said I'm aware of what I did there. But you still said something. Okay, so that's why I walked out of the film uncertain of what Mr. Astor wants from us in this movie, because the way she looks at the end of the film with the smile, it's almost like all of this was premeditated, and that she was okay with everything that happened up to this point, because then what else is it? She's happy now that she's had a breakthrough. She's May Queen and her boyfriend is burning up.
That's it. She's found a community. But the whole film, she didn't have, like, she was disconnected from her family, and her family is now taken away from her by her sister. She has somebody who's supposed to be her support system, who's not really a support system, and now she's jettisoned that guy, and she's now an integral part of this community.
Okay, I agree 100%. But what the hell does that say about her that finally she finds a place to be?
And it happens to be homicidal maniacs.
That skin people and put their skin penises on their body and burn bears and build a building just to burn people, and flowers that kind of talk to you when you're tripping, which is a great shot, by the way. I was like, did that flower just open and shut, or am I seeing things? Because I think this movie is having an effect on me. And then when you saw it again, I was like, oh, whew. I was like, because I know I was like, is this going to be one of those things that nobody else sees and it's not really there?
Yeah, no.
Because it happened to me in Us. It happened to me somewhere in this film. So I don't. So, okay, then I'm not saying I'm not saying I need to have an understanding of this film. Sometimes you just have to let art flow over you. And whatever you feel when you're experiencing it, we've talked about this a million times, whatever you're seeing at that museum, whatever you're feeling at that concert, whatever you're watching that baseball game, it doesn't necessarily need to be specifically art. Whenever you're crocheting something, whenever you're cooking something, whenever you're with somebody, when you're feeling that feeling, you don't need to analyze it. You don't need to understand it. It just is what it is. And sometimes in movies, that has to be the reasoning behind it for me, because I don't necessarily need an explanation. I don't want an explanation per se, but I do get perplexed on, this is what I was feeling. But then she smiles and I went, wait, what am I not getting here? And I think that you clarified it by saying she's found the community. I actually got that. I thought about that later on. And then I thought, well, it took the guy to burn up in a barn, but he kind of dodged a bullet with that one. Not literally, he didn't dodge the bullet, but He was right to try to dodge that bullet because look what she's like.
Wow.
Now I'm going, my picture's going up on the wall and well, I mean.
You're saying that
dude,
him burning up in a bear suit is better than being her boyfriend for a certain period of time. That's what you just said.
Okay, no, that's not what I said. No,
sure,
that's
dodged
not
the
what I
bullet
just
there.
said.
He didn't have to
But
spend
if
another minute with her because he's burning up in a bear suit.
After they sacrifice 9 people by sticking twigs in their arms and pears in their belly and cutting open a bear, and then she smiles. So what's that say?
Yeah.
I mean, what's that? Now, granted, I think the hardest thing to recreate on film is insanity.
Yeah.
Because insanity is sort of an abstract thing. Insanity is in the eye of the beholder.
Yeah.
Right?
It assumes sanity. You have to. The only way to define insanity is to compare it to sanity. And in this case scenario, in this specific case, she's not insane because all the people that surround her are exactly like what she's feeling at the end of the film. So, in that reference, using the Horga as a reference point, she's completely sane. But using us as a reference point, all those people are crazy.
I don't like the word crazy.
Okay.
But I see what you're saying. It's just, I think it's like,
reductive.
It's just one of those it's like saying, no, I don't really think of it. I think it's like saying that film was so weird. It was so avant-garde. It was so independent. What does that mean? That doesn't describe your feelings when you're watching a film. You know what I mean? Like weird is subjective. It might not be weird to me, but it might be weird to you.
That's
so
what I'm saying,
to say crazy, yeah, I get what you're saying though. It confines it to a word so people can understand what we're talking about. So I accept it in that terms. But then I have to say that I feel like the movie sang for me, that it was the experience I was supposed to have. What I took from it, I think I understood what I was supposed to take from it. And on that level, it's a phenomenal movie. It's really an extraordinary movie. And then if you take the possibility that you're going to contemplate this the rest of your life, and by you, I mean me, that I'm going to contemplate how I feel, and maybe in different phases of my life, like when I'm 72, how am I going to feel going into a relationship or coming out of a relationship, or, because there are things that I can understand that she was going through, and vice versa. Also, not vice versa, but also with him and other people. And I've been through a lot of those emotions. So I understood that. So in a way, a side note, you know what I want to do from this point on? Because people ask me all the time, what are you watching? What do you recommend? What should I be watching? I am going to start recommending these movies.
Recommend Midsommar as a date night movie and see how that goes.
Something like that. Something like that. Like, oh yeah, sure. If you just want to watch a movie to have a good time, watch this movie. Because I'm not so much curious about their reaction to the film. I'm curious to their reaction to why I would think it was just a popcorn movie or a light fare or whatever, because you definitely come out of this movie feeling a certain way. And it's because the experience is so etched out that you are basically dripping with it when you walk out of the film. And a lot of times with certain films, I want to read about it, analyze it, figure out what other people thought, go to Twitter, get people's opinions, find out what you thought. Learn that those art history lessons that we've talked about in the past, where you learn about why that painting is important or why that building is important. For this film, I don't think I want to know, because I think what I took and what I have from it is what I was supposed to. That's why I was saying in the beginning of the podcast, really, what the F, Mr. Astor? What the hell do you want from us? Is not a cut down or criticism. It's a compliment, because it puts you in a different realm. You are riding in a different realm when you're watching this film. Yeah. So to that avail, it's brilliant.
So did you notice that this film was shot in a different aspect ratio than I've ever seen? And there may be a precedent for it, but it was shot in an aspect ratio of 2:1, which is rare. I noticed it last night. I didn't notice it the first time, but I noticed it last night where, there's the curtains on the side of the screen, right? And those curtains can move in and out based on whether it's Academy, which is that's 1.85 to 1, or if it's Cinescope, which is 2.40 to 1. So those are the different ratios. Well, this is somewhere in between. So what they did was they put it in the Academy, but then they added black bars on the top and the bottom of the screen to give it that 2-to-1 ratio. And I think some of that may have something to do with like photography frames, where it looks more like image than film, than what we would consider film, which would be like extremely widescreen. Ben-Hur's even crazier. Ben-Hur's, I think, 2.77 or something. It's crazy wide. And it's not that, but at the same time, it's not television. It's not 4:3, which is all like square TVs were 1.77 to 1. So it's somewhere in the middle. But I don't know. At least the second time, it was somewhat a little disquieting to me. I don't know. It just seemed a little different, a little off. And so, yeah, I don't know. That was one of the little technical things that I noticed the second time. And there's a couple of, different technical issues, not issues, but technical instances that you think about. Once they get to Sweden, it never is dark. Like ever. Like only in certain rooms is it dark. But even when the Josh character sneaks out to go into the temple or whatever, the church room or whatever it is, the sanctuary, it's still like kind of daylight outside. So that is also a little disquieting there. And so, I mean, we keep talking about it, I guess, but there were a couple technical things. The CGI is like my favorite kind of CGI, where it's just kind of swept under the rug, where you've got the grass kind of growing out of her hand, which just looks really naturalistic. Even when she looks up at the trees, this is like the first time that they're tripping on mushrooms. She looks up at the tree, and it's not like the tree is completely bending side to side and moving all over the place. It's just that it kind of looks like things are crawling along the tree, and it's naturalistic to the point where I've never been on mushrooms, and I probably never will be, but I could imagine what that would feel like from seeing that, and it doesn't seem too outlandish. It seems believable to me that what she's experiencing would be realistic in that headspace.
It looks like veins and arteries, with blood flowing through it. It looks like and that's when he's talking about the trees speak and all that other stuff. And I can neither confirm nor deny that I've done shrooms, but it does look like that.
Okay. I will not force you to confirm or deny whether you've done mushrooms, but I'm glad.
But it so looks
theoretically, it looks like that. So that's what we'll say.
Yeah.
So
sure, wink wink.
That's about as technical as, I mean, and I guess there's practical effects too, the kind of gory breaking up of, heads getting smashed by mallets and all that stuff, broken legs, all that stuff. But the good thing is that's practical, and it looks real enough to where it doesn't take you out of the film. I mean, I don't know what that stuff would look like, in real life, but I think it would be pretty darn close. And I hope I never see it. So, there you go. It didn't take me out.
Well, I do want to say one thing real quick about what you were saying. I don't know anything about the ratio, or I don't really understand that kind of stuff. I sort of understand what you were talking about, but I did notice that when they had that extreme close-up of the lady at the end, when she was like, okay, wake up, Christian, wake up, Christian. And then his eyes open and she goes, oh, there you are. It was unnerving in a different way than a lot of those close-ups were or are. And I think maybe it's because you were talking about the ratio and how like center she is and how like she's right there. And it's just disconcerting. And it's supposed to be,
they're using
of course,
a wide
because,
angle lens there too. Yeah.
Oh, so creepy.
Yeah. And when they closed his eyes, they closed one eyelid and half the frame goes dark, and they closed the other eyelid. And when she opens up his eyes, she opens up one eyelid, then the other. So that was another neat little symmetry.
Yeah. I've never seen anything like that before.
Yeah. I was trying to think
I've seen people get their eyes closed like
Yeah.
that, but I've never seen it quite like that. It certainly looked like you were seeing through
Yeah, it looked real.
his eyes.
Yeah.
It was
I
great.
wonder what Diving Bell and the Butterfly, that was more like just kind of like the weird morphing of the picture, kind of seeing images and shapes and stuff. But I don't think they specifically necessarily determined left eye, right eye. Because I think he only had one. Did he only have one eye?
No, I think they did that same thing where it's kind of like blurry, and then you can kind of see the
Yeah.
line where the eyes, and then the eyes open, and then you can kind of see more, and then that they do it when he's underwater too in Diving Bell and the Butterfly.
Yeah.
It's masterfully done.
Very
but
well done.
It's different here. This seemed like new. It seemed like a fresh take on it, but it seemed real. Like that's actually what he was seeing, which was really disconcerting.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a kind of a good place to leave it. So I'm definitely gonna revisit this film. I don't know if this is one of those movies where I want to buy it or not, but maybe just the fact that it's like I can, provide it to someone else to watch. Maybe that's worth buying. It, take away the hurdle of them trying to find it and just be like, here you go. This is yours now for a while. Deal with it.
That's what I'm saying. And don't say anything about the film, and just say, this is what I recommend this week. And their response to you behind your back is, I would love to have it taped, because they're going to be like,
You know what?
is
It's a
Josh?"
summer road trip movie, It's a boyfriend, girlfriend go on a road trip.
Hey, Mom. Hey, Dad. Is this a Mayfair movie? Let's watch the Mayfair poll. Yay.
Well, that's a little creepy.
Not quite,
Yeah,
hon.
but anyway, so yeah, I'm interested to revisit this later on, maybe after having a little bit of distance. But you can check us out on the web at actorandengineer.com. You can go to facebook.com/actorandengineer, and you can tweet us at actorengineer. And we'll see you next time.